Hello everybody and welcome back to 10 Things to Love or Hate. Today we are going to be covering the newly released and hyped up Destiny 2. I have been playing the hell out of this game. This game has been out for 12 days as I'm recording this, and I would say I've put in roughly 80 hours. I have 3 characters that are between 295 and 298 power level. I've been playing this game way too much. I've been no-lifing it, so with this being a sequel, with this being Destiny 2, I have 2 times the 10 things. I have 20 things today because I have a ton to say about this game after putting in so many hours, and I definitely think, from a review perspective, I have a good standpoint here because I've played the game very thoroughly and seen everything that it has to offer. So without further ado, we're gonna go right into the first thing that I love, which is the first hour of the game. Those of you who've played Destiny 1, or those of you who've heard anything at all really about Destiny 1, probably know that the game didn't have the best story mode. The reason for this being that the story missions were not very compelling to play, and they often involved very little lore, or what lore there was very confusing, because Bungie opted to move the majority of the game's story into what were called grimoire cards. Grimoire cards, think of like Dark Souls, how when you get an item, you can read the item description, and you'll get lore about that particular item that'll relate to maybe an NPC or an area or something like that. That's what grimoire cards were, except they were on a fucking online website, and no one wants to go online to read about a game. I mean, if you're gonna go online, you may as well watch a YouTube video or something like that, which I'm fairly certain that stuff exists out there. It'll just categorize all the lore for you, and there's a ton of it, but none of it was in the game. The story was boring, it was dry, it almost made me quit the game. Immediately when you start the game, you get this amazing cutscene, you get thrown back into the tower, which was the hub world in the first game, and the tower is under attack. A place that you never actually got to do any real gameplay, more so just use it as a hub to talk to all the NPCs. No, this place is under siege now, and not only do you get involved, but the NPCs that often colored the tower and didn't have a lot of personality until the Taken King expansion, you see them around. It reminds me of one of those, if you've ever been to Universal Studios, they have those rides where you will be in like a car and you'll see kind of like Spider-Man go by and he'll like shoot a bad guy and a bad guy will come at you, and it's kind of like you're there, but you're not really doing anything, you're experiencing it, but it was really cool to see. Like there's a moment where you walk through a door and Cade 6, the lovable Nathan Fillion's Cade 6, is standing there looking at some legionaries, and he uses golden gun and just pops off a bunch of shots and kills them instantly. There's this extremely badass moment where Ikora, she's super pissed that these guys are invading the tower, putting the Traveler at risk, because she has a hard-on for the Traveler. So she throws a Nova Bomb and just casually glides down like a badass. It was really cool to see all that stuff. It was cool to see familiar faces. And most of all, it was very gripping, because there were a lot of challenges in Destiny 1, but you never felt like it was that big of a deal because you could just respawn. But in this game, Gaul, the villain of the game, takes away your ghost and destroys your ghost, so you don't have the ability to respawn anymore, and he takes away your light, which is what gives the Guardians their powers, what gives them how they can throw grenades and do melees and glide and all that stuff. So you become a powerless nothing, and he just throws you off the tower. It's extremely intense, and the moment when you get up and walk really slow, like in hindsight, maybe you walk a little slow for a little bit too long, but they had never done anything like this before. They just tried to use banter over the comms while you were just doing shooter gameplay to try to make everything come together, and that just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to be really compelling, so I like that they tried to do something different. It is a little tedious when you go back and do it again, but it was something that I really thought set the stage very well. And beyond that first hour, I would say the second thing that I love is that I do really feel that they improved the story of Destiny 2. You have similar missions with the banter, however, you have more investment in the characters because you get to know them a little bit as you go throughout the story. Essentially, in the story of Destiny 2, you have the main fire team that were the leaders of the Warlocks, the leaders of the Titans, and the leaders of the Hunters, Cade, Ikora, and Zavala. And they've scattered after Gaul's taken over the tower and are trying to recoup and are all going through different struggles. Zavala feels powerless and doesn't know how to handle being out without his light, being unable to respawn, and it gives him a interesting dynamic. It's interesting to see Zavala afraid. Cade, being the charismatic guy that he is, he doesn't care. He just wants to find a way to teleport in and put a bullet in Gaul's head. But we need to bring him together with the Zavala so we can get a plan going. And then Ikora is really, again, she's really into the Traveler, so she's off like weeping because the Traveler's in pain, and yeah, she's weird, but she comes back to the team. And then there's a new person, which almost made me think there was going to be a fourth subclass in this game, like the normie subclass. There's Hawthorne. She's not a guardian, and you get some experience talking to folk that aren't guardians, because you never really interacted with anyone like that in the first game, but there are people out there that don't have light, that can't respawn, and it gives an interesting dynamic. It's something that you never really think about, because respawn mechanics in games, you kind of just don't pay attention. You're like, whatever, I got a game over, and you respawn. But it actually has some lore implications in this game, and I think it's pretty neat. There's a lot of cinematic cutscenes. I would say that they're very well done. The only thing I noticed about them is there's this really weird film grain over it. I guess it was to make it appear more cinematic, and it kind of works. I mean, the cutscenes are very good. I thought they set the stage well. And after the game concludes, I like that because you kind of bond with these characters over the course of the story, it makes them feel more alive when they're in the tower. They have a lot more personality this time around. They're not just like an echo chamber to give you loot. You actually have been through a struggle with these people, and it gives you a greater investment in every time you get to have a conversation with them. So it's very nice. The problem, and the first thing I hate, is that why is your guardian mute? Why can you, the player character, not speak? I mean, I don't ever really think I love a silent protagonist in games. There's of course games where it works. It's not a detriment to the game, and I don't think that it's a detriment to Destiny 2 per se. The problem I have is your guardian, he spoke in Destiny 1. He spoke in vanilla Destiny 1. And then he just stopped speaking in the expansions, and they just stuck with that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Nolan North. Nolan North is one of the best voice actors to grace video gaming. We all love him, and I like him as the Ghost. I know some people don't like Nolanbot. Some people want Dinklebot back. Some people don't like the robotized. That's not a word, but some people like that, or don't like that. I don't mind it. I love Nolan North, but I still, there's situations where someone's looking at my guardian, speaking to him, they're waiting for a response from him, my ghost just starts talking, and he kind of looks over at the ghost like, huh? Like, I thought I was about to speak, but no, he doesn't, because they were too lazy to hire a voice actor? I don't know. It's strange. I think it would have added something if your guardian actually spoke, give him a little bit more personality, because I feel like anytime they have a silent protagonist, the point of having a silent protagonist is to make you feel as if you're in their shoes, like you are the guardian. Well, when I'm a fucking robot, I don't feel like I'm the robot. That's my robot guardian. That's my hunter. Like that, no. But that's a pretty minor complaint. I'll tell you that the majority of my hate things are going to be pretty minor. I do like this game quite a bit. But the second thing I hate, and this might be controversial, is Gaul, the villain. I think they set the stage for Gaul really well. I talked about that first hour. When he comes out and just beats your ass, takes your ghost, crushes it, throws you off the tower, I was like, holy shit, what an intimidating setup. Like, I can't wait to like struggle with this guy over the course of the game. Except that you don't ever struggle with him over the course of the game. He just sends his troops after you while he sits in a room and has fucking tea with the speaker. Like, the whole game, every time there's a cutscene, every time there's one of those cinematic cutscenes that I was just praising, there's this weird symbol, I think it's like the Red Legion symbol. It appears and shows that Gaul is still in the tower talking to the speaker. Long story short, he's got the means to take the light from the Traveler and use it to make himself stronger. But because ego, he wants the Traveler to choose him. And the speaker is the person who speaks for the Traveler, so he's trying to extract information from the speaker about how to get the Traveler to choose him as its champion, or guardian, or whatever you want to call it. And even though the voice acting is well done and the scenes aren't bad, it kind of reminds me of if you've seen the Marvel Cinematic Universe, how Thanos, like we all know it's coming up to the Infinity War and Thanos is finally going to use the Infinity Gauntlet and he's going to do something. But for this entire time, he's been sitting in a chair doing nothing. And that's what Gaul does. Gaul is sitting in a fucking room doing nothing the entire game until he finally, his advisor, who, wow, evil, actually has some sense to him. He's like, you could have taken the power a really long time ago and you just haven't done it. What the fuck? And Gaul's like, how dare you question me? He chokes a bitch, and then he's like, well, shit, the Guardian's here, so now I am gonna take it. You were right, lol. And then it culminates in a boss fight with him, which is arguably the easiest part of the game. It's so fucking easy. He, like, don't get me wrong, there were so many bullet sponge boss enemies in Destiny 1, and I feel like they rubber banded in the wrong direction here. Designing a boss fight is not an easy thing to do, okay? If I wanted to design a perfect boss fight, I probably couldn't do it. So I get it, Bungo. It's hard. But giving you a near unlimited amount of super and giving very few enemies and having his attacks be so easy to dodge, it just, I guess it culminates the complaint that a lot of people have had. I've heard a lot of people say that Destiny 2's campaign is too easy. I guess I agree. I don't know, it's still a fun fight. It's just he had so much potential to really be a hassle for the player for the entire game and set up this huge antagonistic relationship, and it just never pays off. Maybe that was bad expectations on my own part, but I kind of wish they had done something a little bit different with it. With that said, let's segue into something else. Let's talk a little bit more outside of the story and more about how the game is structured, because I absolutely so love how they changed the way the world is structured. You never, or not never, but you so rarely go to orbit in this game. For those who may not have played Destiny 1 or haven't played Destiny 2, going to orbit in Destiny 1 was something you had to do anytime you wanted to go anywhere. You had to leave your location, go into orbit, and then go to your next location, which meant 2 loading screens. It was very annoying. It was very unnecessary. So in this game, you get what's called the director, and essentially you can just travel to and from any location, and it cuts out the middleman entirely. I will admit, for nostalgic purposes, I do kind of miss having to go to orbit. Sometimes I'll go to orbit just for nostalgic reasons and to group up with people before I'm going to do the raid or do an activity or whatever, but it's really not necessary anymore, and I like that. I think they did an amazing job with that. They also did an amazing job with the patrol in this game. Patrol in Destiny 1 was very disconnected from the story missions, from anything other than just like a slew of enemies. In this game, the planets feel a hell of a lot more alive because you have NPCs there, you enter the missions in the world space, Patrol's connected it to it all, public events have markers so you can find them, you can fast travel around the world, you do eventually get a sparrow at the end of the story, and definitely pro tip, if you get a sparrow at the end of the story and you want to start other characters, transfer the sparrows through the vault because, oh my god, don't get me wrong, they made a beautiful world, but I don't want to have to walk everywhere, okay? I can see while I'm driving past on a sparrow, but I'm not gonna lie, they did a really, really good job with it, so I understand why they don't give you a sparrow until the end of the story, unless you buy some bright engrams. We'll get to that, don't you worry. Now, one thing they did add was a new social space called the Farm. You, of course, can't use the tower because the tower has been taken over by the Red Legion, so there is the Farm. And the Farm it's cool. It's not like the most sexy hub space, but it's something different, and something different than we ever had before. We only had the Reef and the tower in Destiny 1, so it was very cool to see something totally out there from what we'd seen before. But I hate it, only because it's abandoned so quickly. After you complete the story, you get to go back to the tower, of course, because you take the tower back over, so you just go back there. And then there's no reason to go to the Farm. I, in my 80 hours of playing, have only had to go back to the Farm once because there was a quest that required you to go to the Cryptarch on that planet, which I'm pretty sure that a lot of people wanted that Cryptarch to be the Cryptarch of this game because everyone hates Rahul, that smirky little motherfucker. But sorry, Rahul is back in the tower. sorry to tell you. I just wish that they had given some reason for the farm, since you can... I guess I wouldn't have wanted the tower split up. Like, it's nice that you can do everything in one location. Just give it some kind of purpose. They added this whole new clan system, so maybe they could have added that to an extent, which I actually don't think I have that on my list of things I love, but they really did bolster clans in this game by quite a bit. So I guess this is a bonus. This is a bonus. Clans in Destiny 1 had really no purpose at all. There was nothing to them other than just having a name and having that be your group of friends. In this game, you get extra loot, you get extra perks for having clans, so it's a pretty cool thing. We have a clan for my Twitch channel, and we have like 40 or 50 people in it, and we all get engrams for each other for doing activities every week. It's really nice. It's really, really nice. And it's similar to the faction changes. In Destiny 1, you had to do activities where you'd get reputation points, and that would get you engrams from whatever faction you currently had active. In this game, it's not based on activity solely, you just earn tokens through the activity instead of some experience bonus. So through patrols, through chests you might find in the wild, through public events, through high priority targets, you will get these tokens. And for every 20 that you get, you can trade it in to a vendor for 2 legendaries and a chance for an exotic, which is just showing that this game has an improved loot system, an improved progression system, because it used to be, at least in year 1, I know it got better as time went on, especially with like 3 a coin for exotics and all sorts of crap. It's so easy to get loot in this game. It really, really is. If you know what you're doing and you're a efficient min-maxer like I am, then you really know how to move around quickly. The thing is, farming for these tokens and doing public events is a very efficient way to level up to 265 power, which is actually enough to start the raid. That's enough to start getting into endgame activity. And then if you have these tokens, you can probably get to 270 just by trading them in, and which makes you ready fully for the entire raid. The raid ends at 280 and you'll get gear throughout it, and that's high enough to get through the raid. So the problem is, while I love that those are faster methods of getting loot, they really fucked over strikes. Now, before I go into that, I want to say just straight up that I love the new strikes. They're similar to raid quality. They actually have mechanics. They're not like just ride your sparrow past everything and get to a bullet sponge boss anymore. They actually have unique and different challenges and engaging bosses at the end that have like multiple phases. They're really cool. But putting that love aside, they're just useless right now in terms of progression, because a public event takes you like 3 to 5 minutes. It gives you a token. It gives you a chance at an exotic. It gives you all this good shit. And a strike will take 3 to 4 times longer, and it offers pretty much the same level of gear that you'd be getting if you just did 3 or 4 public events in terms of tokens. But in terms of actual loot, it's giving you like 2 blue items, maybe a legendary, maybe an exotic if you're lucky. Just playing the numbers, you're just better off doing public events. So don't get me wrong, not everything in Destiny needs to be done for loot, but you're mistaken if you don't think the majority of the player base isn't going to play that way. They used to have a heroic strike playlist, and they don't have that right now. I don't know if that's because they assume that people just wouldn't be high power level. Lol, Bungie, you knew very well that people were going to grind the shit out of this game. So I hope that they do that. I hope they add a heroic strike playlist that offers higher benefits. They used to have like a consistent bonus where you got better loot chance for the longer you stayed in the strike playlist. I think they really need to do something about that. Now, the hope is that they wouldn't nerf public event loot to force you to go do strikes, because that's what Bungie seemed to do in Destiny 1, so hopefully they don't do that. Public events are very rewarding in this game, so I hope they don't do that. Now, if you do want a good version of the strikes, there are the Nightfalls Return. Those were always higher difficulty versions of strikes that you could do once a week that would give you a lot better loot. And this time around, they have 2 modifiers, one of which is always time-based. I'm fairly certain that that's a sticking point for some people. I think there's some people that love it and some people that hate it, and some people that just want variety, like not every week to be timed. Personally, I speedrun games casually, so I love it. I think getting through them fast is fun, because I hated the Nightfalls where you had burns in Destiny 1, where you had to like hide behind walls because the enemies hit you so damn hard that you couldn't really do anything about it. So the speed Nightfalls are so much more fun for me. But I think that I've heard ideas from the community that the best thing to do would actually just be to put skulls, kind of like they did in Halo, where maybe the Nightfall every week has 5 modifiers you can choose from, and you have to pick 3 or something like that. That way, everybody has a challenge, but you get to customize it the way that you want to. Sure, some people will probably pick the easy combination, but maybe you hate a certain modifier. Like, I hate the Prism modifier that they've been using the last 2 weeks because it's bugged right now. And basically, Prism is like the burns were in the last game, but it rotates every 30 seconds between the 3 elements. It doesn't stay on the bottom of the screen, so if you're not paying attention or if your teammates aren't paying attention, you won't know what it is, and it's a pretty big deal, so kind of annoying. But apparently they're looking into fixing that. I can't imagine how hard it is to fix, but I don't develop games. I don't know. I have no idea. Let's talk about something else that I love, because the Nightfalls are great, but we've talked a lot about getting loot and how you progress in this game in terms of your power level, which is the same as light level from Destiny 1. There's a very nice progression in this game to get you ready for endgame content. By the time you finish the story and are level 20, I'd say you'd be about 200 power, and then if you just play public events and patrol around, you'll get tokens and you'll get blue loot that consistently gets better from the public event chests. It takes a while. It takes maybe a couple hours, maybe a little bit longer, but you can get to 265 by just doing that. And then once you cash in the tokens, you get to 270, like I mentioned before, and that's enough to do in-game activity right there. Then they have multiple weekly activities that give you what's called powerful engrams or luminous engrams, and they drop at about 10 to 15 levels above your current power, so those really boost you once you hit 270. So it does start to slow down once you get there, but there's a lot of powerful engrams available. There's like 6, I think, that you can get every week, and having multiple characters also helps. When I started my second character, so I grinded that way for my first character, but what happened with my second character was I transferred my weapons once it hit level 20, so I already had like 270, 280 weapons. Putting those on a 200 power character instantly made that character like power 230 or 240, which rubber banded the drops for my armor up really fast, and within an hour I was able to get up to like 270. It was amazing, just doing public events because I had higher level weapons on and the rubber banding like bounced off of each other. It was great. It made it really, really easy to level up new characters, which is nice because once you've done the story once, you don't really want to do it again and spend all the time doing the grind. So I like that they did that. They did make it so you can only infuse weapons into the same type of weapons, and you can no longer infuse Titan armor into Warlock or Hunter armor. So they did kind of hit it in that way, but their new smart way of rubber banding your power up like that seems to just work perfectly fine. I love the power progression in this game. It never felt to me like I hit a wall where I'm like, fuck, I just can't level up. I just can't get the drops I need. It almost seemed like, maybe not so much in the end game, but at least in the early game, the game was even intelligent about what items you needed and would make sure they were always giving you drops for whatever your lowest power item was. And it seems like they do that to some extent in the end game. I've had a couple characters who maybe have some pieces that are a decent bit lower than my overall power, but it's been pretty good. I can't say that I've been upset about the loot at all. So let's talk about the loot itself. Let's talk about weapon and armor. There's nothing I have to say in particular about the weapon and armor themselves. I like the way the armor looks. The weapons are very nice. They're still like top tier weapons, but all of them are viable, which is great. They brought some old exotics back that everybody loved with new perks, or maybe the same perks, and they brought some new exotics, and a lot of the new exotics are great. Probably my biggest thing, though, that I love, is that you don't have to upgrade weapons or armor anymore. I hated doing that. You used to have to level up every single new piece of gear you got, and with this game, you're switching out gear all the time as you're powering up, just like with Destiny 1, so it's really nice not to have to constantly be upgrading every single weapon. Eventually, they made a way for you to like use a kind of outdated currency that you could use to level gear fast, but even then, it's just like, just take out the middleman. Just don't do it. That may have come at the cost of them removing, what's the way to say this? Potential perks from a gun. Like a gun could have 7 different perks or something. Now guns have static perks, but honestly, I prefer that because some people liked the grind of searching for what you'd call the god roll on a weapon and being like, yeah, I have this god roll weapon. And for me, I'm just like, can we not do that? Can we just have a pool of weapons to look through and just decide what's the best for everybody? Like Xur, the exotic merchant, sold the Merciless this weekend, and I'm really glad that he did because it's one of the best weapons in the game, and everybody has it, which is amazing because if anyone is up to the level you can be buying exotics from Xur, no one has an excuse not to have it for the raid, which is great because it's super useful in the raid. So I like the way they did all that stuff. And you wouldn't be able to talk about the armor without talking about one other thing, which is another thing I love. It's the death of intellect, discipline, and strength. I think that this is also a controversial change. I think there's some that like it and some that don't. Intellect, discipline, and strength allowed you to augment the recharge rates of your super, grenade, and melee. What they decided to do instead is you can now install mods on your gear, which if they're legendary will actually give it a 5 power boost as well. But you can change mods in and out, so if you feel like you love running Sunbreaker, you put all solar mods on your armor. One day, maybe you change your mind and now Striker's your favorite. Now you can switch over Arc mods. It's really cool, and you can take all the rare mods and fuse them into legendary ones if you have the right amount. They did a really good job with all that. And instead of having the intellect, discipline, and strength, now you have resilience, recovery, and mobility. So resilience is like your armor, so to speak, your actual armor, how much damage you can take. Recovery is how fast your health comes back, and mobility is how fast you move. And I don't think they have the biggest impact. Like, I've noticed that my mobility change doesn't seem to be that significant. Resilience does seem to have a decent punch to it if you don't have enough resilience, and recovery really does matter. My recovery, when I think my Titan has like 1 recovery, he recovers so tortoise slow, it's so bad. But I don't know, I'm stuck with the gear I've got right now. I said I was a min-maxer, but I just wasn't paying attention when I did that. I was like, that gear has higher power, I'm taking that one. So yeah, I should have paid more attention to that. And I will as I go on in the game. Let's talk about Bright Engrams. Now, nobody really loves microtransactions. I don't think there's that one guy out there that's just like, fuck yeah, I love me some microtransactions. That's my favorite part of the game. But, okay. People got really, really upset about the microtransactions. And let me be clear, people didn't get upset that microtransactions existed in the game. They got upset that a lot of things that were not tied behind microtransactions before are now tied behind microtransactions. And more specifically, shaders. I don't like it either, guys. I don't like that the shaders are consumable. It's a backstep on a mechanic that was already done better in Destiny 1 that was deliberately done so Bungie could make more money. Or get you to play the game more, because Luke Smith was quoted as saying, well, I want to hear the quote, well, I need to play the raid so I can get more raid shader. And it's like, what? Why? What? It's really stupid. But I'll be honest, it hasn't impacted me at all. I've never had a moment where I was like, fuck, well, I want to put this shader on, but maybe I won't have enough of it. Like, that hasn't happened to me. I'm also really basic when it comes to how my character looks. Like, I don't get too upset about it. Then again, my Titan with the raid shader, with some of the raid gear, some helmet I got from the Eververse from a packet or Bright Engram, and the Jump Jet exotic pants, he looks fly as fuck, boy. He looks so damn fire. He looks hot. So I can kind of get it, but I have more than enough shaders. I'm swimming in shaders right now. So I agree that it is shitty that they're consumable, but it doesn't bother me that much. It's not enough to take away from things, but yes, it does suck. However, you get Bright Engrams by leveling up. I've already gotten multiple exotic emotes, legendary emotes. I've gotten exotic sparrows, shaders, ships, like all sorts of stuff. And you just do it by playing the game. It just happens naturally by playing the game. Sure, you can get more if you go and buy some, but the campaign gives you some too. And you could certainly make the argument that what they're trying to do is give you a taste. They're trying to take a Bright Engram platter right in front of you and say, hey, you like the way this tastes, right? You know you could have more for $24.99 if you just buy some of our silver. You don't have to do that. Have some self-control, and those that don't will buy the microtransactions, and that'll support the live team that'll get us events, and that's that. It's fine. So, yes, I do think we should fight back a bit against microtransactions, but I don't think they're going away anytime soon, and until they actually affect gameplay, they don't bother me. That's my stance on it. If they had made it so you could buy engrams, like weapon and armor engrams, we'd be having a completely different conversation, but because it's all cosmetic stuff, I don't care. And you can, mind you, you can get armor. I just said I got a helmet from one of the Bright Engrams that dropped for me, but it was power level 10, so you had to infuse it up anyway. It's just a cosmetic looking item, so not really significant. So we talked about the structure of the game. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the characters. Because the characters are really what matters, right? The classes, the subclasses. They made some changes, and I want to talk about them, because in my Destiny 1 podcast where I talked about the hopes for Destiny 2, I talked about what I wanted, and I gotta say, they pretty much did everything I was asking for and more, so I'm pretty damn happy. To start off with the changes, they made the classes less customizable, but they gave 2 distinct sets of playstyles for each class. And they also made it way faster to upgrade all your classes, which is super nice, because when you start a new character, upgrading all 3 of your subclasses was a pain in the butt. I had all 3 of my subclasses leveled up by the end of the story. So it's pretty cool. Let's talk about the Hunter first. Everybody has a passive ability now that is active for all 3 subclasses. So no matter what subclass you're running, you will have this ability. The Shade Step, which was a Night Stalker exclusive ability in Destiny 1, is now the ability that you get on the Hunter. There's one that it's kind of a dodge backward, and it will give you an immediate reload of your weapon, or you can get a Shade Step where you kind of do a dive roll, and that will give you melee regen if you're near enemies, which they're invaluable perks that are just the icing on the cake of having a dodge. I have to say, this is such an amazing passive. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's talk about how it affects the things. Arc Strider, the new Blade Dancer. It really just, the easiest way to describe it, it's a better Blade Dancer. The super lasts longer. It's more effective in PvE than it used to be. With the Raiden Flux exotic, it's broken good. The Raiden Flux boosts damage for the longer you hit and makes the super last longer. It's such a good PvE super, where Blade Dancer before was a piece of shit. The only thing it really had going for it was invisibility, but other than that, it wasn't much. I also I was just mentioning the Shade Step with the melee. One of the trees in the Arc Strider class allows you to get your dodge back every time you get a melee kill. And then if you're using the Shade Step one, you get your melee every time you dodge near an enemy. So you can just do an endless melee loop. That's not really that useful in the end game when enemies do a lot of damage, but in the early game, it's just fun as shit to do. And it's pretty good in PvP. The only time it sucks is because it's a roaming super. You're going to be walking down a corridor. You might get team shot. We'll get to the PvP. Gunslinger, I'm going to be honest. I was never a fan of Gunslinger. I just don't like the super that much. It's cool that it's a quick, just, fire off super, but I always just prefer Night Stalker in Destiny 1, and I guess Blade Dancer to some extent, but it's really good in PvP for quick KOs. Always has been, still is, and the gun does last a very long time when you're not shooting it. I would say it's poor in PvE compared to the other subclasses, with an exception of doing high damage to bosses, especially if you have the Celestial Nighthawk, because precision hits do some serious damage. So they did make it better for PvE. I just feel like Gunslinger's lacking, or maybe it's better to say I just don't like the Gunslinger. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with the class, just not my favorite. Night Stalker, I have to say it feels less substantial than in the previous game, if only because the new classes are improved. Night Stalker felt like a no-brainer before, because it just boosted damage on all bosses, and it still does that, and it's still useful. I just don't know that it's as useful as it used to be. I haven't found myself using it. In fact, I'd say it's probably the one I've used the least. But it's still an amazing PvE class, and it has a high skill cap for PvP, and it can be very useful there as well. I think the main point of the Hunter, though, is that the Hunter feels better than any other class. In my opinion, I think it's the best class because it offers the best toolkit outside of the supers to me, and that's where you spend like 98% of your gameplay. You're not using your super that often because you don't get it that often, so the Hunter's very, very good for its toolkit, and even then the supers are competitive with the heavily offensive supers of the other two classes. So I think the Hunter's my favorite. Doesn't mean the Hunter's objectively the best. This is my opinion. I think the Hunter's my favorite. If you like the other ones, that's totally fine. I still like the other ones quite a bit. Let's talk about my old favorite from Destiny 1, the Titan. The Titan used to be my favorite with the Sunbreaker class. I liked quite a bit. And that was good for me because they decided to make the Titan a very offensive class. The passive ability for the Titan is a shield that kind of replaces the Ward of Dawn. The Ward of Dawn actually does still exist, but we'll talk about that. It emphasizes how situational the ability was, though, because it doesn't have Blessing and Weapons of Light anymore. And it does have uses, don't get me wrong. It definitely has uses, and the Rally Barricade, if you crouch behind it, you instantly reload, which can be really useful for boss phases in the raid. So it's situational. It has some uses, but it's not as universally useful as something like Shade Step. So what they did with the Defender class is they changed it to the Sentinel, which... we were talking about the Avengers earlier. The Titan is the Avengers now. He's Captain America, the Incredible Hulk, and Thor. The Sentinel is Captain America. It changes a defensive class from the previous game into a more versatile offensive-defensive hybrid. It's still pretty useful, but I think it lost the utility that made it unique and nearly mandatory in Destiny 1. But I think that's for the better, because I don't think any class should be mandatory. I don't like for the raid. I think that it's good that you can have variety. The class is still a lot of fun. I love that you can throw the shield and you can melee and you can make it so you have 2 shield throws, and there's an exotic that makes it so every time you melee, you can throw the shield goes through multiple enemies. It's a very cool super, and the class does have a lot of utility, so it is a nice class. The Incredible Hulk, the Striker, is an offensive monster. It's just a straight up offensive monster. It's the same super as before, and I said it needed some changing. Well, after you smash, you get to run around and shoulder charge and smash some more. You just smash, fucking smash. I love to smash. It's great. And double pulse grenades on that class destroy in PvE. If you're having trouble with the dogs in the raid, use the double pulse grenades. I mean, you should be using AoE grenades on them anyway, or like damage over time grenades. They're so good. They're so fucking good. Sunbreaker, the Thor, it's pretty much the same class as before. There's not too much that's different about it. I would say the shame is that while the class remains a very good class, it's outshined in some ways by the offensive rise of the other 2 subclasses. I think the one thing that they need to do to change that class a bit is I think the super could last a bit longer. I think you can get like 5 hammers, maybe 6 off. I think that maybe it should be more like 8, but I don't know if that'd be balanced well for PvP. But for PvE, it just feels like it's not long enough. Maybe there's an exotic that I haven't gotten yet that augments it. And I know there's a thing about you create sunspots and you can stand in them and it makes the super last longer. But I haven't tested it enough, to be honest, just because the other 2 are so great that I haven't bothered with it. So maybe I'm underinformed. The Titan, in the end, went from an offensive-defensive hybrid to a nearly all-out offensive force of nature. And for better or worse, I think it decreases the overall value of the Titan a little bit, because it's not supportive anymore. It's just kind of offense. I still think it's a good class. It just isn't as good as it used to be overall, because it's kind of one-dimensional. But it does that one dimension very, very well, and it's a shooter. You need to slay enemies, so it is an important thing that it's able to do. Now, its utility was stolen by the Warlock, whose passive is a healing and empowering rift. It's a little circle that you throw down that can either heal you or give you extra damage. So essentially the Warlock took the Blessing of Light and the Weapons of Light in its own ability, which I think was needed. I mentioned that I think the Warlock should be a supportive class, and I like that it has a supportive ability to it. It also no longer has self-revive. I was so excited that it didn't have self-revive anymore, and it gives it a neat offensive super. It has a Dawn Blade. It's fun to use, and it's kind of like the Warlock Sunbreaker, all-out offensive, but I have to say that I think the Dawnbreaker is definitely, or Dawnbreaker, Dawnblade, whatever it's called, I think it's Dawnblade. I think it's outshined by the other 2 classes, I have to say, because the other classes are offensive too, and the Dawnblade is just, it doesn't last that long either, kind of like Sunbreaker, and while it's really fun to use, it's just not as good. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it is good. But the Voidwalker is amazing. The Voidwalker is improved for PvE because it's less of a one-pump chump, and it gains of a lot of abilities that have one of the best non-super kits in the game. Devour with your grenade is so good. The Vortex grenades, the damage over time is amazing in the raid for multiple different targets. The super is incredible. The damage is really, really high, which it always should have been. And they have a new version that travels slowly and like blows up and seeks out people. It's cool. I love it. The Voidwalker is probably my favorite new version, which I love. Stormcaller has 2 flavors this time around. It has all-out offense or support, which is nice because the Warlock has kind of a support class. The only problem I have is that I mentioned the trees are locked. You either pick the 4 on the top or the 4 on the bottom. And the one problem I have is it should be all-out offense or support, and there's a landfall, which is basically adds like a Titan smash to your super. I feel like that should be in the offensive class, not in the support class, but it is. I feel like they need to swap that into the offense class, and it would make the class better overall. It's the best super in the game, I'd say, for clearing trash mobs efficiently, like when we're talking like really small ones, because it chains and hits everything. It's amazing. It's still tons of fun to use. Being Emperor Palpatine is great. I use it in the raid. I enjoy it. But Voidwalker's probably my favorite. The Warlock, I'd say, is my second favorite class. I think the Titan's probably my least favorite now. The only thing the Warlock has that I really don't like is the jump. I've never liked the Warlock's jump. I can use them all. I've been playing platformers since I was a kid, but let's not pretend like that jump's super fun to use. It's not. It's not. But maybe your Warlock mains out there, you love it. It's whatever. I give love to all classes, but I like the Hunter jump and I like the Titan rocket, especially with my jump jets. Okay, we have a few more things to talk about that I love. I'm sorry. There's nothing else to talk about that I hate, because I really don't hate much about this game at all. It's very minimal things. I know if you go on Reddit, you'll see a bunch of Bungie pleas, like people want tiny little fixes for so many different things. I'm satisfied as fuck with this game. I have to be honest. One thing that I'm very satisfied with is the Crucible changes, and that's another controversial thing. I know there's some people that like it and some people that certainly do not. I love the 4v4. I personally struggle in games when there's too many enemies, because I'm not great at deducing what other players are going to do. I'm better at reading AI. And having a 4v4 makes it a lot more tactical to me. It makes it a lot more team-based. There's a team-oriented atmosphere now, especially because I wouldn't say abilities are nerfed per se. They just don't come back as often. If you use them and know how to use them, they will make a difference, but you can't just use space magic and fucking win anymore. And that's a shame for some people, because some people like high-octane space magic. I personally never did like that, so I like how they've changed it. Your abilities are still useful, but they aren't king. And primaries are also now king because they changed the secondary slot and power slot and moved snipers and shotguns down into the heavy slot. Heavy ammo does spawn more often and is easier to get, but oh my god, it's so nice not having to wait for some little fuck around a corner who's crouching waiting to shotgun you, and it's really nice not getting just picked across the map when you're just trying to do something. I just love the new PvP. Maybe I like it because I play way better. I think I have like a 0.8 KD in Destiny 1. I think I have like a 1.3. No, that's Trials. I have a 1.3 KD in Trials. I have like a 2.2 KD in just regular PvP. It's just way better. I'm good at shooting headshots with my primary. Come at me. Come at me. Well, don't, because I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that are better than me at PvP, so please hold back. The last thing, big thing anyway, to talk about is the Leviathan raid. I've always said I love the raids in Destiny. That's like the pinnacle of Destiny for me. And I have to say, the raid did not disappoint in the slightest. The scale of the raid design is astounding. It offers a fun place to explore, a palace with shortcuts. There's this huge sewer network that is a shortcut now. There's chests everywhere. There's a bunch of different challenges to do. The biggest change, I would say, honestly, other than, you know, having the shortcuts instead of the checkpoints, is you only get 6 revive tokens in the normal raid. So you can't die much, even in the normal mode. You must revive within 30 seconds too, or it wipes the team, so you have to be a lot more strategic about how you revive, and basically it just means most encounters, you kind of need people to not die. And that's the ideal anyway. You don't want people dying. I don't know if when the Prestige, which is their version of hard mode now, when it comes out, if they'll keep it this way. It seems more like Bungie's trying to find different ways to make the harder content more difficult. I know in the Prestige Nightfall that I completed this week, they lock your loadout. So the moment you fly in, your loadout can't change anymore. They may do that for the raid. To be honest, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I'll be interested to see how they change the mechanics. Anyway, this raid, absolutely, very much like King's Fall and somewhat Wrath of the Machine, focuses on mechanics over gun skill. This is so much about positioning, smart, role performance, and knowledge of mechanics, and less about the skill of one individual and just about how well the team performs as a whole and how well people can hold their role. It's better from the perspective that you can't really carry a weak link, and that shouldn't be something you can do in a raid. Everyone should have to be able to carry their own weight. But it's really poor for those who just want to group together casually. I know not everybody has 6 friends to play Destiny with, or 5 friends. And LFG is just something that people need to do. So I feel kind of bad for the people who just want to be able to play the endgame content and have to work together with people who they don't have chemistry with because they haven't played with them. People just frankly sometimes are bad, and so I feel bad about that. I really do encourage people to try to get out there and join clans and try to make consistent friends. Like I mentioned, we do have a clan. We have a Discord for it too. You can find it if you come to my Destiny streams on Twitch. We have commands over there where you can get to join the Discord and the clan. We'd love to have you. So the relics is kind of the first part to mention of the raid. It's a pretty fun little segment. Basically, you just hold down a spot and people go and kill these yellow bar guys, and they are able to take relics back to this spot. You have to do 3 of them, and you have to make sure you kill these little scions that protect themselves with Ward of Dawn style bubbles. Like you have to run in and melee them. Otherwise, a guy can come up and steal one of the relics and make you have to go get it again. Pretty fun part, but you have to do it 4 times. Every time, there's 4 main sections of the raid, and every time you do another section, you have to unlock it by doing another one of these trials. They replaced the platforming sections in the middle of the raid with the tunnels below, and I don't really know if that's better or worse. There's times where I don't like it, and there's times where I do. Like, I'm iffy on it. I'm debating on it, but I will say by the time you're getting toward the end of the raid, you're just excited to get through it, and having to do the relic part again is just like, okay, fine. It only takes like 5 minutes, so it's not a huge deal, but it's just not the most exciting thing in the world once you've done it 3 or 4 times in a single raid instance. The first main thing is the bath trial. The bath trial is a really fun segment that has 4 people holding down spots with 2 floaters running around to keep everything working smoothly. Essentially, you have these bathers that'll come out, and you need to hold a platform where they're going to be coming out because a chain's moving down, and once you get your chain to move all the way down, you'll get to go to the center and damage these chimes that will end the sequence once you can destroy all 9 of them. Well, you have to stay on the platform, and the platform's in this little sewage thing that you have to protect yourself by getting what's called psionic protection, and you have to run to the center of the map to be able to get it. So you have to have the floater rotate around, cover the platforms for the people who need to go in the middle and get the psionic protection. It's kind of like a communication check. It's really not a hard segment at all. We did spend a significant amount of time on it, learning it as we went in blind, but once we got it, it was pretty easy. And then I went and did it yesterday for the second time, and we killed 8 of the chimes on our first go. Like, nobody died. It was super easy. Like that, once you understand that segment, it's very easy, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun with great teamwork. I really do enjoy it. Then there's the dog trial, and well, stealth in a shooter or lull. Like, what are we doing here, Bungo? Why? There were the Gorgons in Vault of Glass, which everybody loves Vault of Glass. The thing is with Gorgons, it was not a shooting segment. It was just one of those little platform downtime segments. This is an actual boss, technically, encounter, because you have to kill 6 dogs. The way it works is you have 2 people on the top with these crystals, and they have to shoot in these little light circles the flowers as people hold these spores and get near them. But there's dogs patrolling around. The reason you need to shoot the spores is it gives you stacks of something called effect spore. As long as 4 people with spores get near the flower and you shoot it, then you get 12. And the more you get, the more damage you do to the dogs. It scales upward. And from what I can tell, the effect spores, they scale on a very exponentially upward trend. So getting 24 versus getting 48 is like, it's not double damage, it's like quadruple damage. It's crazy. We struggle with that so fucking much because those dogs are so sensitive to their detection, and once they detect you, they start doing a howl, and after 30 seconds it'll wipe your team if you don't go in a safe room. Fortunately, after doing it long enough, we know the paths really well. We're able to get 48 effect spores pretty quickly, and once we have the 48 spores, we've gotten it to the point where we just assign everybody a dog because they always go to the same spot when they start howling, and everybody can just outright kill their own dog at 48 spores using damage over time grenades and the merciless fusion rifle. Amazing. Yesterday when we did it, we wiped once, and then the second time everybody just killed their dogs and we did a 1 cycle. It was great. It was great. So I don't hate that segment. I just think the dogs are a little bit too sensitive. Sometimes they really run off their path, and it's annoying. But still a decently fun segment. The next is the Gauntlet, which I said there wasn't platforming, but the Gauntlet is literally platforming. I don't even want to explain this encounter. There's no point. Like, if you want to go watch someone else's video and explain how it's done, then sure. But it boils down to, you need 2 people to run in a giant circle. They have to go through 4 gates, and you have to shoot the correct patterns that they call out so that they can get through the gates safely. And after they do it 3 times, everybody has to run it, and it's this clusterfuck at the end where you have 6 people running, trying to grab these 4 orbs. You can't survive not grabbing 2 orbs, so you have to organize your team, who's gonna get it. The way we did it is we had 2 people as 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, and those people swapped orbs back and forth, and 5 and 6 just always grabbed orbs. That way we got all the orbs, and as long as you get 2 orbs out of each 3 rounds, you only need 9 total. So you only need 3 people to make it to the end. The only thing that can fuck you is if someone dies at the beginning of the run, then the revive timer will come up too quickly and everybody will just wipe. And it's such a long segment. It takes like 10 minutes to do a successful run, maybe longer. So I do like that segment. I think it's fun. I think it's probably the easiest part of the raid. But if someone fucks up, then it takes a really long time to do it over again. So yeah. Then the final thing is the really only legit boss in the raid, Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt, Covetous Demon. What a complicated boss that I love. I do love it. It's a really amazing boss that blends elements of Atheon and Oryx. There's 2 separate teams. There's a lot of communication needed. There's specific spots you have to hit to deal damage. There's multiple phases that offer additional challenges. It's a perfect peak to the raid. It's a perfect peak to the raid. I really do like the boss, but it's so mechanical that if one person fucks up their job, it can lead to a wipe. So it's just indicative of the whole raid. This is a raid where no one can really fuck up. Like, of course, yeah, you can have tiny fuck ups. Like, people can die, they can get revived, but the fuck ups have to be very minimal. And for the normal raid, I wasn't expecting it to be that intense. And to be honest, I like it because I'm very good at the raid. Not trying to stroke my own ego, I'm good at PvE in Destiny. I'm okay at PvP, but I'm very good at PvE. So I like that there's a challenge, especially with the story being so easy and generally the strikes being pretty easy. It's nice that the raid is very challenging. However, you can only do your own role. So you have to rely on 5 other people to do their roles well. And whether they're as good as you are or not is up for debate. And even if they aren't, you still fuck up sometimes. I'm not sitting here and saying I've never caused a wipe. Hell no, I've definitely caused wipes. So it can be frustrating, but at the same time, it can be really, really rewarding. I've played with a group of subs and moderators and stuff for my Twitch channel, and they're friends for me. And it's been really rewarding playing through the raid with those guys, having banter, like just talking shit to each other, laughing, and, you know, getting better at the raid. We took, like, I think 10 hours to make it to Callus the first time, and then we got to Callus yesterday in, like, an hour and a half. So we've already improved within a week, like, significantly. It's awesome to see. It really is. And that's what boils down to one of the final things I love is the social phenomenon. Destiny 2 is a very social game. Sure, you can play it alone, but it's way more fun with friends. Some of the best gaming moments I've ever had were raiding with friends in Destiny 1. I feel like some of the best moments I've shared in gaming in the last year, multiplayer-wise, have been in Destiny 2. It's kind of amazing how fun this game is and how many people were brought in. I remember when we talked about Destiny 2 months ago with my fans on Twitch and stuff, they were kind of like, yeah, Destiny 2 seems like it'll be cool. There were some who were already in it, but I think almost maybe double to triple the people who originally were getting it have been like looped into getting it. Even one of my moderators, Tatenator, went out and bought a PS4 just so he could play Destiny. I mean, he wanted to play Bloodborne and other stuff too, but it was the final push, and he's been a huge help in the raids, and he's been a lot of fun to play with. So it's been really nice having something to play with friends, because I play a lot of single player games, and that's my bread and butter. That's the thing I like to do, but I always like to have one thing that's like, okay, I want to do something with my friends. So Destiny was that for me, and Destiny 2 so far has absolutely been that for me. And the final thing I love is just that Destiny 2 is a massive improvement over Destiny 1 in my eyes. No, it doesn't deviate heavily from what Destiny 1 did. It just is everything that was good about Destiny 1, and it makes everything that sucked about Destiny 1 better. Yes, there are like very minor things that might be worse, but who the fuck cares? Like, I'm not a nitpicker. I'm not a nitpicky guy. Like, sometimes when I make these videos, I make nitpicks, like my Guardian's mute. Like, that's not really a big deal, but it's just something that irked me enough that I pointed it out, and other people are different. There's certain small things that don't really irk me that irk them. But I have to say that just nearly everything is improved, or they removed it if it was just something that was a pain. And it's incredible that in a gaming release year like one we've had, that heavy hitters like this are still making waves, and Destiny 2 does that without question. I'm adding a rating score to this series. I am going to either say that I loved a game, I liked it, I'm indifferent to it, I disliked it, or I hate it. And I hate it. No, I don't hate Destiny 2 at all. I cannot tell you how much I love this game. Like I said, in a year where I've had many games that I love, many games that I would consider to be some of my favorite games of all time, Destiny 2, I would say, is one of the best games of the year. You owe it to yourself, in my opinion, to at least give the game a shot. Maybe my review was enough to make you want to give it a try. If you have friends, it's amazing to play with friends, so much fun. It still offers some content for solo players, and maybe you'll make friends through it. When I got Destiny 1, I had one friend that I played it with, and I ended up making many more online friends than I ever expected to. It was an amazing experience. I've met some people that I never would have had a chance to meet otherwise, and I'm gracious that I have had the opportunity to meet those people and have them as friends. So, no matter what, I hope you at least enjoyed the video, and I definitely encourage you to comment below on your thoughts on Destiny 2 if you're playing the game. If you're not playing the game, tell me what you thought of the video based on what I said about it. If you hate Destiny 2, you can tell me that too. I saw on the first podcast, some people were like, bro, are you moving to Destiny content? Like, real bad move, bro. Souls is out there. And I'm just like, chill, guys. I made Souls content. Now I'm making other content. I'm not becoming a Destiny YouTuber. I'm becoming a gaming YouTuber. I'm going to talk about many games, and there are many more to come. The next game I'm going to be talking about in the 10, 20, whatever fucking thing series is Cuphead. I'm really excited for Cuphead. That game comes out, I think, in 11 days from now. Yes, I'm looking at my calendar. It is September 18th as I'm recording this, so Cuphead comes out in 11 days. I'm excited to do that. A final note, I am aware that this was more in like my podcast format. I think that will likely be the format that I do most things in going forward, because this is just fun for me. Honestly, I feel like I'm having a conversation with you guys. I have notes in front of me. I did not script this video. I think that's probably obvious, but it's fun. I really like recording videos this way, and I'm not gonna lie, it takes less time to do, so it's more viable for me to get videos up for you guys faster, and I do think these videos are very high quality still. I watched my own podcast. I feel like it was verbal masturbation, but I watched and listened to both of the podcasts, and I found them very enjoyable, so I hope you guys are enjoying them too. I will stop rambling your ear off now. We've been here for a while. I'm gonna go record another podcast, I think. Maybe. I don't know. But either way, there'll be another one soon, and thank you guys for listening to 20 Things I Love and Hate About Destiny 2. I love you guys very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you may be. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.